Good afternoon to everyone and a warm welcome. Uh, it's a pride and honor to have Chaitanya sir amongst us. Mr. Chaitanya Gorrepati is the director and member of the operating committee of DE Shaw, where he oversees the finance, legal and admin board of directors function for the DE Shaw entities in India, including the financial operations team, which specializes in global delivery of analytics, financial reporting, tax, pricing, investor relations, and regulatory compliance. Sir has close to 20 years of experience in the industry and is a qualified chartered accountant. He is widely recognized for his strengths in finance, operations, strategic sourcing, and relationship management. Well, that was a brief introduction of Chaitanya, sir. It's requested to all that in case of any queries, kindly type in the same in the text box given below. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir, now.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Aishwarya, and thank you, Shripal, for giving me this opportunity to talk to the students of your esteemed organization. And a very good afternoon to all the students. I hope all of you guys are doing well and you all are safe along with your families. So thank you so much, guys, for once again joining. So what I want to do today, and when Shripal reached out to have this session and talk to all of you, it also gave me a chance to reflect on my own career and what have I been doing and what is it that I have learned through my career and the skills that I have developed or consciously worked on are in to be able to create that difference, and how did I manage through the entire competitive environment over all these years. So it was a good point for me to reflect and try and put together in my own thoughts a reflection of my own career. So I was thinking about how do I do this entire presentation, and should I do a really fancy PowerPoint which will have animations flying over, great images, good pictures, etc. But then I realized that substance is really more important than the form. So I wanted to focus on making a really simple PowerPoint, not so much of how good it looks, but definitely try to ensure that it has all the content that all of you at the end of this 1 hour can walk away with something that hopefully will help you through your own careers and your future. So yet again, the intent is not to make this sound as a gospel, because there is no one way of making one's career or developing the skill sets. It's to each to each it's their own way of developing it and what works for them. What I've tried to do here is to kind of create a narrative of what has worked for me. It does not necessarily mean that this is the only way to do things or these are the only skills to develop. It's a reflection of what skills I had to develop to stand out and build my own career, right? So don't consider this as the only skills. Use it to whichever way you want, and try and adapt them to your situations, your careers, and the encounters that you would have in the future. So before I jump into these slides itself, I just will spend a few minutes on what my career trajectory has been so far. So it at least lays a ground on what are the skill sets I had to acquire to perform different kinds of roles. So I qualified my chartered accountancy way back in 1999, and when I completed that, in the very first attempt, it was a very different world from than what it is today. We didn't have very active campus interviews. We didn't have jobs chasing us. We did not have the LinkedIn's or the headhunters or the additional skill sets that today a lot of our students have to be able to make us competitive. So the only big company that came to the campus at that point was Satyam Computers. And that was my first job. So I got selected. I worked with Satyam Computers for about 9 months. And then at that point, I wanted to do my MBA. And the reason I wanted to do an MBA was because it was always a aspiration that MBA is going to give me skill sets that a CA curriculum could not give me in terms of management techniques, in terms of communication, in terms of presentation, stakeholder management, what have you. Which is really the how of doing things. And then I realized that if I want to do a MBA from a good college, I really need good experience from a good MNC, which is why I moved on to working for GE after about 9 months with Satyam Computers. And G also happened by chance. This was way back in 2000 when G was just about being set up in Hyderabad. And a friend of mine and I, as we were riding on our bikes, we just saw this big board called G setting up in Hyderabad. And we had absolutely no clue what the company is about because that was just the beginning of the MNC era in Hyderabad. And we just thought, okay, maybe the next time we pass by one, why don't we just go and drop a resume? And in a very, very funny way, G actually had a drop box outside their office for people to drop their resumes. And both of us just happened to drop our resume and are lucky enough, we got a call for interviews and then interviews converted into a job. And then I happened to work for G for about 5 years or close to 6 years. And within my tenure with GE, there are a bunch of different roles that I did or I navigated myself through. It's very interesting that as I was actually being interviewed for a role in finance, they for some reason bounced off an idea with me that would you be interested in doing a role leading the entire training team for the finance organization? And that sounded really weird at that point. Me and doing training, that's not what I studied CA for. That's not what I'm meant for. But there's something in me which said, all right, I have age to my advantage. I have an opportunity to learn something new. So why not give it a try? And that was a time where there was this entire MBA Kida in the mind that, all right, as much as varied experience as I could get, that's going to give me an edge with my application. So I bounced and took the training role. In hindsight, I think that was one of the smart decisions that I had made, primarily because it just gave me a completely different skill set perspective and a lot of learning, which any other role or any other a classroom session would not have given. It's the first time I got to figure out how to train others, how to stand up in front of a crowd and talk, how to prepare a PowerPoint, how to prepare what the audience is looking for. And it was a great learning experience for me. But after about 18 months, it was back to the calling of, okay, do I want to do this long term? And I decided, no, that's not what I want to do long term. Long term, I want to do finance. So I hopped back into different finance roles within GE. So I did roles which had give me exposure of working in a joint venture between GE, which is one of the largest multinational, and Indian public sector, which was a joint venture between BHEL and GE. I also got an exposure of working on Sarbanes-Oxley, uh, through a stint in the GE US office, where we wanted to implement Sarbanes-Oxley a year in advance and in almost 50 countries across the globe. So it gave me an exposure of doing global project management, working with folks from 50 different countries, and ensuring that there is a consistency of our approach, consistency of our entire thought and how we wanted to implement it across all the different regions that GE Capital operated in. And then I came back and worked with our GE Consumer and Industrial, which was an industrial entity, in focusing again on their finance role. And post 6 years, I got an opportunity to work with UBS. UBS was setting up their office in Hyderabad, and I happened to be the first ones to get hired as or rather as the first finance team member in UBS. So that gave me a completely different skill set again in terms of a startup experience. UBS at that point was in India set up and was being led by a team of expats whose strength was not really the local statutory requirements or the statutory laws or the processes and what works for the employees here. So it gave me a chance to set up the organization right from basic things like a chart of accounts to the ERP to the pricing models to the FP&A team to the controls to the monthly packages to the reviews to what the senior management wanted to what have you. So it gave me a complete end-to-end perspective from at the beginning of the organization till we scaled it up to over 1,000 people. And then, after about 2 years, close to about 2 years in UBS, I moved on to Microsoft to handle a much larger role as the finance controller for Microsoft in Hyderabad. So again, this gave me a completely different skill set in a large IT organization with a significant IT outsourcing, not just from Microsoft to Microsoft India, but also from Microsoft India to a bunch of third parties. So it gave me a chance to develop varied skill sets on vendor management, IT outsourcing, working with GDCs, and then the entire finance controllership for a large organization. When way back 8 years ago, Microsoft in Hyderabad was about 5,000 plus people. So just the sheer volume of it and the fact that it was one of the largest Hyderabad-based, Hyderabad headquartered MNC was a big draw with all the statutory authorities. So there was a significant amount of interaction with the government agencies, not just in terms of all the statutory filings or what have you, but also in terms of discussion on policy matters, discussion on on representing the IT industry in various forums. So it kind of gave me a really big role and a lot of visibility in both with the government, with the industry bodies, and just the complexity of the role itself. And post that, I took on the role as the CFO for DE Shaw in 2011, and I've been with Shaw for over 8.5 years now. And over these years, in addition to just being the CFO, I've added more responsibilities of overseeing the entire admin, legal, and the financial operations teams as well. So that's a quick journey of how my corporate life has been over 22 years. And I took a few extra minutes to walk you through that because I'm going to connect dots as we speak through these slides on where each one of these roles has played a role into eventually giving me that competitive edge through my entire career and after 22 years. Right? So I'll just take a pause and just a few ground rules. If you guys have any questions as I'm speaking through, feel free to ask your question. I'd rather make this interactive and make it more more useful to you than it being a monologue of what I have in mind. If you think that at any point I'm going off the course, or if you want more insights into any particular topic, just shoot that out and I'll be happy to spend more time or accelerate if that topic is not of that much importance. All right, great. So before I jump into the slides, we all are accountants and we all love a disclaimer. There's nothing that we do without a disclaimer. So let me start with our disclaimer that whatever I talk through this session are my personal views, and they don't necessarily represent the views of any of my previous or my current employer. So this is purely a personal session in my a session in my personal capacity and that I'm doing with Simandhar. All right, we can go to the next one. So what I plan to do is talk about three different topics. One is working in a corporate. The second one is the key skills, which is the crux of our entire discussion. And then finally, what I believe is the key to long-term success. And yet again, let me keep repeating this, that all of these are based on my experiences and my learning. If you hear someone else, they could have a different perspective. As you build your careers, you're going to have different perspectives as well, and which is totally fine. And that is exactly how it has to be, that there's no one way, there's no only one right way of doing things. It's about how we adapt to each situation. Right. The first topic here that I wanted to talk about is working in a corporate. And the reason I wanted to touch upon that is one of the key things that a challenge or a crossroads that you are going to be when you qualify is what do you want to do? The abundant choices that you have. You have a choice of doing your own practice. You have a choice of going and working in a corporate. You have a choice of being your own private consultant. Or and the avenues that are open to CAs, CPAs today are immense. No longer does the world look at us as just bean counters or accountants. We've moved on from that tag many, many years ago, and just the sheer opportunities that exist, that could be in actuary, that could be in project management, in IT, in product development, or as a functional consultant to various ERP softwares, or taxation, transfer pricing, risk management, what have you. It's just immense. The potential that today the qualification carries is multiple. So one of the big things that you're going to face as you are reach or when you are in that crossroads is, what decision do you make? And honestly, it's a very, very personal decision. uh, each one has its own pros, cons, merits. It's up to what you would like to do, and what is it that you're going to be comfortable doing, and what your aptitude is, let's say for taking risk, or for our having the patience to set up your own practice, and having the patience to see that grow over many years, or maybe some kind of an instant gratification of joining an organization, but working within the rules of the organization and patiently rising through the corporate ladder. So it's a very individual and personal choice that you would have to make. But the good part is that you know you can always change. You can always change path, change directions. I strongly encourage you to try different things when you're young, when you have age to your advantage. Because unless you get your hands dirty, unless you try different things, you're not going to know what works for you. So it's totally fine for you to pick one as a choice and then jump onto the other. You know, having worked in the industry for long enough, when I look at hiring people, I don't judge because of the decisions that they make. What is really important is, what are the experiences that they've gained? What are the learnings that they've gained from each experience? And what is their aptitude to do new things? That is all what really matters. So don't feel the pressure of being judged when you pick up something, and if it does not work out and you have to move to a different career path, and that's totally fine. Right? If we move to the next slide, I just quickly want to give you a perspective of what is it like working in a corporate. So it, if you move to the next slide again, Aishwarya. So a couple of things that a corporate gives you is, one, a global context and exposure, purely because uh, most of the corporates are large MNCs. Just like how I had the exposure of working in different geographies, at the same time working with people from different geographies, people with that have diversified qualifications. I've worked with people who've I've worked and continue to work with people who are from the top colleges, the Whartons, Harvards. I work with scientists. I work with are people from such diverse backgrounds that it just helps me in every interaction that I have learn something new. And the fact that if anyone if you had a question on why did I leave GE, why did I leave UBS, or why did I leave Microsoft, such great organizations, there's only one reason. And the reason is a very, very personal choice that I wanted to stay in Hyderabad. And if I did not have that limitation, which is my own personal limitation, each of these organizations had given me an opportunity to pick and choose any place that I would want to work and the kind of role that I want to work on, that they would go out of their way to support. And that is the beauty of these large organizations and corporates. When you build your own equity and when you know that you're good at your job, the companies really love you, and they would want to retain you at any cost and give you different roles and use your talent and your expertise on more challenging roles. So this is one of the big advantage of working for a large corporate. And the next one is uh, about standardized and best practices. One of the advantages that, so Aishwarya, you can click on the next. So one of the other big advantages are how the large organizations really work well in such a diverse environment. Imagine a company like GE. GE is spread over 190 countries, or and it's into different businesses. If you look at the different business lines, when I was working, there was airlines, there was medical systems, there was capital, there was manufacturing of tube lights, washing machines, energy, which is windmills, solar mills, etc. So how does such an organization that is so diversified, which has different set of people working in 190 countries, still be able to maintain a sense of homogeneity and how it works? That's really because of how processes, how thought processes, not just in terms of workflows and infrastructural processes, but how people think similar, how people think in a way that the organization molds you. And that's a huge learning, because as I grew into other roles, as I had larger teams, as I had teams that are spread across different geographies, that learning helped me really drive that sense of homogeneity in the thought process of my teams as well. you know and finally, I think there's a lot of learning opportunities that the large MNCs give, or large corporates give. So broadly, this is what I see as an advantage of working in a large corporate. I'll take a pause here before I move on to talking about the key skills, because that's where we'll spend some time, which is also the crux of this entire discussion, to see if you have any questions.
Yes, sir. I'll be taking the question, sir, as of
Sure.
now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uh, we have a question. I believe that in order to be CFO, one should have an overall experience in finance, tax, audit, treasury, etc. However, in one organization, one takes an experience of one function. So moving on to next company for different profiles affect compensation, how people deal with this.
Yeah. So let me also break the myth of the CFO necessarily being the best at everything. I don't think that is even practically possible. I, as a CFO, I don't think I'm the best at taxation. I'm the best at accounting, or FP&A. So you really don't need to. What you need to as a CFO is to have a good understanding of what each one of this is. A ability to synthesize, assimilate, look at what is the impact of the statutory rules on your company, and adapt or advise your board, your shareholders, your senior management on how you need to how the organization needs to react to any of these statutory requirements. And not just statutory requirements, but as a CFO, the bigger responsibility is to, one, at a core, understand what your business is. How do you generate sales? Who are your customers? What is your business model? What are the risks that you carry? What's your supply chain? What are the things that could accelerate or derail your business? And your ability to navigate or help the company navigate through your expertise while being compliant with the laws and being able to synthesize the data into insights, patterns, and be able to support decision making. That's really your role as a CFO. So what I would suggest is, what one would realize is that as we grow into larger roles, our capacity or ability to be an expert at everything diminishes. So one, you always have a great team, and I'm proud to have a great team that really supports me in all of these things. And at the same time, as you move on, you're not going to be a CFO on day one, right? And I thought I'll answer this, when we get into the skill set. But because we have a question, I'll try and articulate it here. When way back early in my career, uh, when I looked at what do I want to do, I knew I wanted to be a CFO. And then I went about thinking, what would it need for me to be a CFO? At the bare minimum, I need to understand the different roles that a CFO is responsible for. So I took up roles which gave me that exposure. I did a controllership role. I did a project management role. I did a global role. I did a role, that was on FP&A. So between all of these roles, eventually it gave it I had a hands-on experience that when I became a CFO, I didn't have to be hands-on or the best at each of that. But because of my ability to have done these roles, it helps me connect well with my team. It helps me understand what they're trying to tell me. It helps me synthesize more quickly, and also be able to give them better direction on how they need to do each task.
Okay, shall I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I read the next question. It says, do soft skills give us an edge, and will it significantly impact our growth in corporate along with technical skills?
Yes.
I'll probably park that question for now because I'm going to talk about it in detail over the next slide. And if it does not answer, I'll come back to this question. Is that okay, Vivek?
So we have few questions in the chat box as well. Uh,
All right.
yes, sir. Uh, like as people progress in career, there are times where one comes across people with bias, conscious and unconscious. Sometimes we ourselves suffer from that. How did you manage it in your career?
Well, that's a brilliant question. Um, Again, we're going to talk about people management in the latest slide. I
Okay.
wish I could I wish I could give you a magic wand that is going to help you deal with all different kinds of people. But the harsh reality is no two individuals are the same, and how you react with each individual is going to be different. And you will encounter people with bias. You will encounter corporate politics. You will encounter challenges. It's not going to be a bed of roses. But what's going to keep you ahead of the game in all of this, in my belief, is a couple of things. One, your own honesty. Number two, how transparent you are. Number three, your ability and your communication skills. Number four, the trust that you are able to build with people that you work with, not just your team, but everyone around you. I think these are the four things that really help help me deal with different kinds of people.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question we have, what is the scope of a CPA in DE Shaw?
All right, so we do have a lot of opportunities for people with accounting background. From Hyderabad, we do our fund accounting, which is closing books, making working on the audit, reporting to the investors. Along with that, we also do management company accounting, which is closing books, reporting, accounting, cash flows, etc., for our own D-Shaw companies. So between both these, we have a lot of roles that have exposure to US GAAP, because that's the GAAP that we follow, both in terms of corporate accounting policies, but also into a lot of in-depth hedge fund accounting policies, which are like the accounting policies that impact swaps, derivatives, and all the other financial instruments. So yeah, we do. I think the financial industry in general has a lot of opportunities for CPAs.
Okay, sir. Um, as there were many US companies in India before we have any CPAs in India, how are CPAs newly contributing to the corporates these days?
Again, a great question. I think if I were to reflect on how we used to do this when I joined a corporate in early 2000s, there used to be these huge training material, which would run into 300 pages, 400 pages, with screenshots explaining the accounting standards, giving examples, giving corner cases of how exceptions have to be handled. You know what that one would have to read through when they join, and then they would go to the US to do the entire transition. That is, learn accounting, close books for maybe a few months or a couple of quarters, and then come back and do a UAT, a parallel run with someone in the US, in someone in the US being able to be the checker while someone here was being the preparer. You know, all that was a process that used to be followed. But today, because we have expertise that people are graduating with, and as I reflect that within the roles in the industry, I see that a lot of roles in the industry today don't necessarily have a preparer checker control between India and US, but to a large extent, there are the checker roles have moved to India. India has people who perform a complete controller role, a role of a corporate controller, a role of a controller for a particular region. So, you know, it has given us that edge and ability to accelerate and take on roles which otherwise we would not have had the expertise and experience for. So I think that's what qualifications like CPA have done in terms of give corporates the confidence that people here can perform those roles.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
With
so
coding,
shall we
yes,
park the
sir.
question and then we'll do the next slide and then come back to the questions again.
Sure, sir.
All right. Thanks so much, guys, for the questions. You can keep them coming. All right, let's talk about the key skills. And at the cost of repetition, these are skills that have worked for me, right? Aishwarya, will you stick to the first one? Because I'll be spending some time on each of these points. Just the first one. Yeah. All right. The most important. I don't have a lot. I think I just have 4 points here in terms of the key skills that I believe are really important. Right. The first one is to have absolute clarity on what your objective and your goal is. And this is really what I think helped me a lot. It's not that I had this on day one. You know, it's something that you experiment with, you get your hands dirty, and eventually you polish it. But at least somewhere you need to have a North Star. What's your North Star? What are you pursuing? What is the direction that you're going towards? And how each and every step that you're taking is towards that direction. So what this translates into is always having a long-term perspective. You will, it helped me have that perspective, and always take the baby steps, navigate myself in terms of questioning whether everything and anything that I'm doing, is that helping me get one step closer to my long-term objective. So it's second thing that has helped me is to write this down, is to articulate. It's one thing when you think about it. When you think about it, there are a lot of words that come into your mind. There's a lot of verbiage that comes. But when you try to put that onto a paper, it really helps you articulate what you really want. And it also gives you an opportunity to question yourself. Is this what I want? And when you have that clarity, there's no looking back after that, because and after that it's just about execution. It's about figuring out at each point what are the skill sets that you require and what are the gaps that you have. And I'll go back to the example that I mentioned earlier. Very early in my career, I knew that I wanted to be a CFO. So I always tried to figure out what are the skill sets that are required to be one? What are the gaps that I have today? And what is it that I need to do to bridge that gap? And you can bridge that gap through multiple ways. It could be taking a curriculum that helps you gain that knowledge, or it could be taking a different kind of a role. It could be doing a project. It could be job shadowing, where you're just sitting with someone who's actually the expert and and kind of learning that. In whatever way it helps you bridge that gap, you got to do that. And one of the most important thing that I've learned through these years is, when I wanted to be a CFO or whatever role you want to perform, don't wait to start thinking and acting like one only when you get that role. It's the other way around. Start behaving, start thinking, start acting like you already have that role, because that's when it really drives that into your DNA. Even before I got the title or I got this role, I started to tell myself, what would I do if I were the CFO? How would I think? What would my organization want me to do if I were the CFO? Even before I was, even when I was doing a controllership role or I was doing an FP&A role, whichever role that I was doing, it's always important for you to tune your mind, start thinking, get that into your DNA, that every action that you are taking, every thought that you have is you're behaving like one, so that the organization notices you. And that's where you're kind of creating your own brand. That's where you're really trying to set yourself apart. And when you get that role, you're not going to be overwhelmed with it, because you've always been ready and prepared for that. And the other thing that is important, as much as you have a clear goal and objective, is to always ask for help. It's not that I'm a superhuman or a superman, that I've learned everything on my own. Wherever and whenever I needed help, I've reached out for help. I've asked people to help me. I've had a mentor, and I would strongly encourage you to have a mentor. Because that's going to, a mentor helps you with the experience that they have. A mentor is a good sounding board, or a risk-free sounding board that you have, where you can bounce off ideas and get unbiased opinion and feedback. So it's important. So to conclude on this particular one, it's important that as early in your career or in your life, you are able to articulate, document what your objective is and your goals are. It's going to help you accelerate and achieve them so much more sooner. Right? The second one is having really strong fundamentals building a super strong foundation, and being the subject matter expert. The reason I say this is you've got to be known for something. People are going to come to you for something. One can't always be a jack of all and master of none. There has to be something that you are known for as a strength. And that could be anything. That could be, excuse me, that could be accounting, that could be taxation, that could be FP&A, that could be your thought process, or that could be people management, that could be your ability to solve problems, that could be ability to take decisions with inadequate data or in uncertain times, whatever that is. But there's something that has to set you apart. There's something that you need to be known for. And again, known, it's something that you identify and figure out what you're good at yourself. You need to know what is it that you enjoy, what you're good at, and how are you going to be able to capitalize on this. And like I always say, and I always believe in, you play to your strengths, because that's what is going to make you stand apart. Once you realize what your strengths are, always use those strengths to your advantage. And it really boils down to creating what your niche is. And the only way it's going to happen is, or it happened for me, is when I got my hands dirty doing different kind of roles. When I got my hands dirty experimenting with different skill sets, it helped me realize what's my sweet spot. What is it that I'm good at? What is it that others look up to me for? And it really helped me create that niche. And it's the reason this is important, especially at your entry level career, is because you put a lot of things on your resume. You want people to know that you're good at something, and when there are questions, you really have to be good at that. And I've had some very unfortunate experiences in some of the interviews, and it feels very sad when someone is a qualified accountant, whatever is the course that they do, but if they're not able to answer the basics, as something as simple as what is the journal entry for depreciation, and the most common one that I get is depreciation account debit to P&L account credit. There's no moving forward in that interview after that. And there is another thing that blew my mind was someone saying when the student was asked, or when the person was asked, when do you remit all your tax TDS deductions? We got a good answer that it is 7th of the following month. And then we asked, okay, when do you remit deferred tax? With the response that we got as, along with TDS, it's remitted also on the 7th. So again, it's a showstopper. So at each stage in your career, what you're good at is going to change. What you're good at will evolve. But what is important is to have that really strong fundamentals. It's something that you're known for. If you are known to be an accountant or an expert on tax, then you better be that. Right? So that's really the second point about why it's important to have that niche. And once you build that niche, it's also critical that you learn continuously. It's been 22 years in my career. What I learned for my getting through my CA, or in the first 3 years of my career, to the next 5 years, to the following 5 years, to what is required today is completely different. I can't bank on what I learned in the past. I've got to keep learning every day. And sometimes it is technical skill sets, sometimes it's non-technical skill sets. But you have to keep evolving, and you have to keep up speed with the changing environment and the requirements of people and the organization. So that's really the second skill set that worked for me. The next one is about initiative and independence. You know? So I'll break this into two parts. One is the initiative, and then the second one is the independence. So when I look at my current role, or okay, let me start with my current role and I'll go back to the earlier roles. In my role as the CFO or the operating committee member of a large firm, there are not many times others are going to come and tell you what to do. You know, there are very few times others are going to come and tell you what to do. You know, it's up to you to figure out what you need to do, what the organization requires, how you're going to get it done, what tools, resources, people, processes you need to get it done, and just go get it done. You know, that's really the initiative. You know, it's about what are you doing, the unsaid or the uncalled for, that is going to be a key differentiator. You know, the way I look at it is all our roles are like a white slate. You know, there is going to be a job description, there is going to be roles and responsibilities that someone is going to give you in a written way, set your objectives, commitments, blah, blah, blah at the beginning of each cycle. All of that is just a small portion of that white slate. It's not the entire white slate. What you do with the rest of the white slate is what differentiates you from the others. You know, and that is really up to what initiative you are going to take to fill that white slate. You know, and what you're going to get rewarded, recognized, your career acceleration, everything is largely driven by that rest of the white slate as much as is driven by the little portion of that white slate that your organization is going to ask you to do. You know, and the reason I mention this is because not just from my role, but it's how quickly can you start thinking like this early in your career. You know, when you start thinking like that early in your career, when you have that sense of inquisitiveness, that not just about what you've studied, because what you studied is not everything that you're going to do when you start working, but how quickly can you develop that sense of inquisitiveness, create opportunities, capitalize on the opportunities that you have, and use your expertise to do the unsaid, is all under the initiative. And that's really something that's going to set you apart, especially early in your career when the expectations are largely more defined, more within a particular boundary. You know, start thinking and wearing those hats, and it's going to give you a huge sense of responsibility that will enhance the impact of everything that you do. Right? So that's about initiative. Now let's talk about independence. You know, one of the things that in my role I absolutely loathe and hate to do is follow up with anyone. That could be my team, my peers, people outside the organization on what they are supposed to do. Following up on anything is an absolute waste of time. So what can you do to avoid that is really to be independent, you know, which means it's how do you create a sense of culture or your own personal, I would say, work ethic that you deliver on time. You know, you deliver to the required quality or better than that, and you're setting the right expectation, you know, on what, when, and how you're going to deliver, and you're proactive and you know, giving heads up if things are going to get delayed. Or bottom line, all of this really boils down to how dependable are you. So if today I have a team of 4 people or 10 people, you know, more often than not, when there is a critical task that needs to be done, most of us have a go-to person. Why does someone become a go-to person? It is because of their, not just their abilities, but because of their dependability as well. How dependable is X, Y, or Z, that I can task them with this particular deliverable, and I can trust them to complete it and meet all the expectations of the task. Earlier someone asked a question about bias. One of the things that I would also say is, consciously or subconsciously, we all have biases. Some of the times, these biases are driven by our experiences. And at times when you need something to be done, you probably may have a go-to person. And the go-to person at some times may have earned it. And it may feel like a bias to the rest of the others, but there may be something that differentiates the person from everyone else. So it's that sense of initiative and independence that gives us the edge against everyone else. So if I have to summarize initiative and independence, it's really about how do you create opportunities, how do you use those opportunities, and how do you deliver on them to be a person that your organization or your manager can trust and depend on, without minimal or with very, very minimal intervention and oversight from their end. That's really a star player. So it's about how can one become that star player. So that's, for me, initiative and independence. I'll talk about the next. And someone had a question as well earlier. The last one, I can go on adding 20 different skills here, but I kind of limited this to 4 key skills, which I thought are the most important. The next one, and I guess, again, a very, very critical one, is communication and people management skills. Unfortunately, this is not something that is taught so well as part of a curriculum. This is something that most of us learn on the job. We learn through experiences. So communication skills is not about the vocabulary that you have. It's not about the grammar that you have. So what is it? So what is communication skills? In my mind, it's about what you say, when you say, and how you say it. It's how you engage with your stakeholders. How articulate are you? Do people understand what you're saying? That could be your team in terms of the instructions that you give them. That could be your stakeholders. That could be your manager, or you're giving someone an update on or talking about the challenges, or you're explaining or articulating a great chart in terms of the insights that it provides, whatever that would be. So it really boils down to the impact that you have of communicating or articulating it well. And that's a huge differentiator. You may be someone who toils hours, days, burning the midnight oil on a lot of things. But if you are not able to articulate and communicate the outcome of your efforts, it's going to big impediment in your ability to create that impact. So I would very strongly encourage each one of you to start developing this skill set on communication skills. How do you get better? It's about watching your body language. It's a mix of your verbal and your non-verbal communication. And it's the impact of whether what you're saying is being perceived by the listener in the same way or not. And how do you get better at it? One is a lot of practice. This is not something that's automatically going to work. Like you read a book, you read a TEDx, or you listen to a TEDx talk, or any other YouTube channel, or anything, and then suddenly, voila, you've turned around and you're a different person. It does not happen like that. This requires consistent, dedicated, long-term practice until this really becomes part of your DNA. So practice this relentlessly. And the second thing that I did was to follow people who really communicate well very keenly. I would observe them, how do they use communication skills to their advantage? And that includes a bunch of things. Like I said again earlier, their body language, their choice of words, their intonation, their pitch, their tone, how do they modulate their voice? How when do they choose to be crisp and succinct versus being verbose and elaborate? How do they differentiate their medium mode of communication depending on the audience? How can we get better at understanding the audience expectation? Because communication is all about meeting the expectations of the audience and creating that impact that the message that you want to deliver is delivered and understood by them. It's as simple as that, right? So it's all about you realizing continuously, literally on a daily basis, whether you're good at communication. And this does not necessarily have to be in your work environment. Start doing this with your friends. Start doing that with your family. You can start doing that with your children if you have children, with your spouse, whoever it is. So it's really about making that part of your DNA. It's not a switch that you have that, okay, now I'm in a critical conversation, so I'm going to bring my communication skill set out. It does not work like that. Communication skills have to be part of your everyday life, right? So that's what about communication skills. And the next one that's important is people management skills. So this is again, how do you handle your stakeholders? As much as your communication skills, we need to realize that we are a small cog in the wheel in the larger scheme of things. We work with a different set of people. And more often than not, every two individuals are different. No two people are going to be the same. So how you expect each one to react to you is very, very different. And yet again, more often than not, you have absolutely no control over how others react to you. So people management skills is all about how you adapt to others. What are you going to do to still be able to achieve your objective and your goal, working with different set of people who think differently, who communicate differently, whose skill sets are different, whose reactions are going to be different. So it's always different strokes for different folks. Your stroke for each person is going to be different. So the quicker you're able to understand this differentiation in people, how people are, and what is it that you need to do to be able to work with them, is going to set you apart. And what did I do to get better at it? There's a couple of things. One is to create an engagement pattern. Once I understand how each individual is different, I mentally make a pattern of, okay, with this person, I need to talk more often. With this person, I don't need to talk more often. With this individual, I need to explain it in a lot more detail. With this individual, I just need to tell them what I need to get done and they will do it. So creating that engagement pattern was critical to me. And then also, like it answered one of the earlier questions in terms of people management, what is important is the way you want to understand others, you also want to be understood by others. So to be able to be understood by others, it's important to have a consistent set of behaviors. You can't behave, you can't be a different person always. People need to have some sense of predictability on how you are going to behave. So which is why it, I try to be very transparent. I try to be truthful, and I don't hesitate discussing challenges. And I always try and create a mutually comfortable and successful solution so that everyone is in it together. Because I realized very early in my career that authority is not always going to get you very far. Authority is only going to get you so much where you can wield your authority. But 90% of the times in my role or in most of the roles, you don't have the authority, but you have the responsibility. So it's about how do you create that sense of influence through your people management skills that you're able to still get the work done when you don't have the authority. So people management skills is a huge topic by itself, but I just want to kind of touch upon the high level things so that at least you understand that between communication skills and people management skills, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for you to realize this. And finally, here in terms of skill set is to give your 100% each and every time. It's not okay to do it once. It's not okay to do it twice. It's about coming back to work each day with the same level of motivation, with the same level of rigor, with the same level of determination, and being at it every single time. I think that's really the another huge key skill set for us to develop, that every time I'm going to get it right, or I'm going to at least attempt to get it right. I may not get it right, but my efforts are going to be 100% each time. I may not be able to control the result always, but what I do, what I can possibly do, I'm going to do 100% of it every single time. Right? So this is what I think are the key skill sets. I want to keep it simple rather than write 20 skill sets here. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to skim through the next two slides quickly so that we are able to leave at least 15 minutes for Q&A. To summarize, again, what my learnings are, I'd say this is not skill sets, but these are things that you need to be aware of so that in addition to the skill sets, you know what is important in life when you're working with others, or when you're working in a corporate or anywhere. It could be corporate life, work life, or personal life. Right? The first one is really about the team. It's never about you. It's never about me or I. It's always a team. There have been many instances in my career where I have not held people in high esteem when they discount the importance or the collective success of the team over their own individual success. So it's always the team. We stand for each other, we cover each other's back, and we always strive towards collective success. The next one is, don't ever fake anything. It's very, very easy for people to see through it. One thing we need to realize is we are not the masters of everything. It is totally okay not to know something. It's okay to fail. It's okay to accept our failures. It's okay to accept our ignorance. We will always have a chance to get better. We will always have a chance to learn and turn things around. But when you fake things, people lose confidence. People lose trust in the person. So always be truthful in everything. That could be your personal dealings or your official conversations. The next one is to be prepared. That could be meetings, discussions. Very early in my career, when I was in GE, someone told me, treat every conversation that you're having as an interview, because you may be judged. People are making opinions on what you say, how you're thinking, what what are the opinions that you make, how you share your opinion, and how you articulate yourself. So always be prepared. Think through, articulate, talk to yourself before you say things. The next one, and this is something that I get asked very often, is about career. A lot of people come and ask me, what do you think I should do in my career? What's my next career move? And my standard response to them is, I'm sorry, but I don't know. It's your career. You should know, not me. I don't know what you like, what your strengths are, what your goals and objectives are, what's going to keep you happy, contented, and what role are you going to perform well. So always learn to manage your own career. Others can help you in terms of guidance, in terms of being a mentor, showing, explaining to you the pros and cons, and being able to share their experiences. But what you want to do in your career is your decision, and you have to figure that out. The next one and the last one here is, really health is wealth. I know I see a lot of youngsters. I see a lot of people in my own team are, unfortunately, at a very, very young age, I see them not being very healthy. And as much as all of us are interested in careers, money, materialistic things, and blah, 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 I think extremely important is to take care of your health. Don't ignore that, because everything else uh, is useless if you don't have this. All right, I'll spend 2 minutes on the next one. The next one, which is what I call it as keys to long-term success, is about is kind of a summary. Is kind of a summary of everything that I've spoken to you so far, and how do you use all of that for a long-term success, right? So I look at long-term success as a triage or as a triangle, as a pyramid which has 3 dimensions to it. The first dimension is the what, you know, so it's the content of your role. So actually, if you can click again, so it's about what you do, which is your goals, your objectives, you being the SME, you being able to produce the best reports, the best results, being on time, the accuracy, completeness, you being the go-to person on subject matters, and then you working on automation, you being focused on process improvements, all of that. This is the what part of your job or your deliverables. This is what you've been basically hired for, or this is your core day-to-day job or core responsibility. Each one of us have to be really, really good at it. But do you think just being good at it is okay? Or what would it mean if good, you're great or good only at it? In my mind, if you're great and good only at this part, it means you're going to be indispensable, which means organizations would love you. They will want you to do the same thing over and over again because you're the best at it. You're doing very, very well at it. Now, the second dimension to the pyramid is the how. This is where all the things that you're not traditionally taught come into picture, which is all your softer skills. It's your personality. It's your personality of what you are, which is what impact do you create? How are your interpersonal skills? Do you respect others? Do others like working with you? Do you have collaborative skills of building a team, taking people along? you know what are your people skills? Do you coach others? How do you articulate? How respectful are you to the others? So this is your entire softer side. This is your behavioral skill sets that you continuously have to develop and evolve in addition to the what. Like I said, what alone is going to make you indispensable, which means organizations will love you. But when what coupled with the how, that is, how do you do the what? When you have both of this, it starts propelling or accelerating your career, because then the organizations will think and look up to you saying, oh, not only are you great at what you do, you're also great at getting things done. So we'll give you more responsibilities. We'll trust you with larger roles because you've not only been good at what you were doing, but we trust you that you will continue to be good at what you will be given as responsibilities in the future as well. So it's extremely important that you do that. The what and how are always going together, along with the third dimension, which is the proven capability, which is, again, Aishwarya, if you click once more, it's about consistency. It's about not having the what and how as a flash in the pan once in a while, but it's about having these skill sets on a consistent basis for you to be able to sustain this forever, through and through, so that when people think about you, they know you're going to get the work done, you're going to get it done in the right way, and you're always going to get it done. So that's really the personality that one needs to build, or the equity or the brand that one needs to build in terms of a long-term success. So that's broadly what I had in mind in terms of sharing my thoughts about key skill sets or my learnings, and also what I think is required from a long-term success. So I'll pause now, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Yes, sir. So we have a question.
Sure.
Is it good that if we keep hopping, which will be inconsistent, do they still consider as a good option in short span without understanding their profile?
My straight answer would be no. There has to be a reason to hop. And as I understand the question says hopping in a short term. The first thing for you to answer and understand is, what is the reason to hop? Is it valid? Is it justified? Is it driven by a personal reason? Is it driven by an organizational change? Or is it a discretionary decision? So a lot of these things go into figuring that out. But the short answer is that frequent hopping of jobs without a valid reason, I don't think is something that's good for your career, because not from what others will judge you, but more importantly, because it does not give you adequate time for you to learn anything, because it takes a few cycles of doing something for you to learn any skill in depth, like closing books. It is important that you do a month close, a quarter close, annual close, not just once, but maybe a few times, all of this. That's when it gives you ability to maybe the first time learn, second time consolidate, third time contribute. So all of these things are a cycle by itself. So that's why that sense of longevity is critical for you to really gain in-depth knowledge.
Yes. So you talked about being the go-to person. Where and how do you draw a line at being at that? There is so much conflict of interest being the go-to person and simultaneously being handed over work that becomes underutilization of your true capacities.
Okay, if I understand the question, where do you draw the line in terms of go-to person? You know, I think there's no line to draw in terms of being the go-to person. Like being the go-to person is really about your expertise, your knowledge, your ability to understand or have skill sets that the others don't have, right? That's when you kind of are the go-to person because you have the depth of knowledge, or you are able to take decisions quickly, or you're able to analyze data in a way that the others don't. So being the go-to person may is not about is not a face off between your other skill sets, other tasks, deliverables that you have versus earning the tag as go-to person. No one is going to give a tag or a badge and say that, oh, you are the go-to person in this organization. It happens naturally. It happens over a period depending on the work that one does, that others start accepting this individual as a go-to person. You see people drifting towards them, and asking them questions or asking them clarifications, seeking a sense of validation from them. So I don't see that as a balancing between the two things.
Sir, how do you think automation going to affect accounting world with blockchain and RPA emerging? Do we need to be future ready?
$1 million question. There is a lot of progress that has already been made on robotics and the entire automation work that a lot of organizations have done. It's been to a large extent successful where there are predictable processes, where there are logic that you can write. However, I don't see that as significantly impacting um, the jobs itself, because as and when automation happens, there is still a lot of other opportunities that it creates in terms of analytics, in terms of insights, in terms of decision making. So today, what gets automated is to a large extent where decisions are binary. Decisions are easy to make, or you can create a workflow that a algorithm can understand. That gives us a lot of bandwidth to focus on other challenges today that the algorithms can't solve. So I look at it as in a very, very positive way that we are able to create that bandwidth to focus on the other more challenging requirements that the organizations have.
What are the internship opportunities for a CPA at DE Shaw?
So currently we are open up our internships. So we have two types of internships in the Fin world. One is for MBAs, where it's part of their curriculum, it's part of their credits, and we have an 8-week structured internship program for the top tier MBAs the campuses that we go to and hire interns. And we also offer industrial training for the C for students following the CA curriculum. I'm not entirely sure if the CPA curriculum also has an mandatory internship or anything, but if you are interested in pursuing internship with DE Shaw, I would suggest you visit our career site and apply to the internship opportunities that exist, and we'll be happy to consider.
What opportunities does data science with CPA have in your firm and others in the future?
That's a good question. Not just in our firm, but I think data science has evolved significantly over the past few years. And our ability to synthesize data, assimilate it for patterns, and aid in decision making has become a huge skill set. We use it for various kind of research uh, in the shore and also across the financial world, uh, where there are terabytes of data, market feeds that you get from different sources. But I would assume that this is the same for all the other data fields as well, and be it medical data field, be it consumer, be it mobile, be it shopping patterns, what have you. So in that sense, mining of data is in itself a huge opportunity in the current world. So whether you associate that through a CPA degree or whether you look at it independently, I think data scientists or data mining is a huge opportunity that you can pursue.
How to handle situations where innovative things are not approved or allowed by seniors? Shall we cross our line and go to super boss then?
Uh,
It's a good
Again, a
question.
very good practical question. So what is important is it, there's no one straight answer to this. At the same time, it's important for you to firstly understand why is it not approved? Is it not approved because it's not completely solving the problem? Or is it because there's more work to do? Or is it because the there are no resources to support that at this point, and that could be from a cost or people or tools perspective? And what is it that I need to do to change the innovative idea that I have presented and why it did not get approved? And despite all of this, if I still believe that I have a brilliant idea that is going to work, then uh, I would respectfully agree to disagree with whoever has denied it and look for an opportunity to share that in a larger forum. But if I have to do that, I will be transparent with the person to let them know that I respectfully agree to disagree and I would like to seek an opportunity to share it with a larger forum. I wouldn't kind of do that behind anyone's back. For me, transparency and the sense of building trust is more important.
So you told about being passionate and visualizing it. What would be a suggestion if anyone is not clear as to what their passion is?
Which is totally fine. I mean, you're when I started my career, neither did I know. And as after I started my career, at some point I knew I wanted to be a CFO. So I started working towards it. So when you dabble your hands and get your hands dirty with multiple things, be conscious of what is it that you enjoy doing. What are your strengths? Where have you been able to be more, where could you accomplish more? And start talking to yourself, and then you will be able to identify. And at the same time, it's not that the passion is going to be the same forever. It's going to keep changing and evolving as well. Like after becoming a CFO, my passion evolved to do other things. So I continue to use the same path. Okay, there are new things that I want to do. And it's the same cycle again. What are the skill sets that are required for me to pursue that? What gaps do I have? How do I bridge those gaps? And how do I pursue my new passion? So it is absolutely fine if you don't have it crystal clear or at this point on what your passion is, but try to work towards identifying that by trying different things and being conscious about your own self.
How you manage to balance work life and personal life?
Again, so more than balance, I would say it's about harmony. You know, work-life balance is very individual to each one. For some people, It could be a 9 to 6 job. For some people, it is about having the flexibility. So for me, work-life balance or work-life harmony is about having the flexibility for me to prioritize what I want to prioritize when I can. So as long as I have that, for me, I'm able to strike work-life balance, which means today, if I have a personal need because of which I am not going to be able to do my office work, and I have that flexibility, my organization provides me with that flexibility, then I'm good. And the vice versa as well. So to each one their own, but to me, that is what work-life balance is.
Sir, in mid-30s, is it all right to change the line of job or do the things which we have experience on and explore more on it?
It's again, there's no age to it, right? There's no age limit to what you want to do or what you can do, or whether you want to switch roles, jobs is a factor of multiple things. What your aspirations are your aspirations being met in the current role that you have? Or are there opportunities that exist in your current organization where you can continue to pursue your aspirations? If not, is when I think one would start looking at opportunities outside. Because whenever there is a change, it could be a result of two things, either a push or a pull. A push is where you do not like what you're doing. A pull is where there's something that is even more exciting for you to do. So I don't think it's really anything that's got to do with age, but it's really you've got to think a lot more about why you want to do it and whether what you're doing is again a step in the right direction towards achieving your long-term plans.
CFO must have an overall experience of finance, tax, audit, etc. However, changing profile does not seem to be an easy decision. Uh, yeah, 1 second, sir. It got swiped up. Yeah. Further, it affects compensation as well, which may not be affordable. How to deal with this?
Um, I don't know about compensation because that's kind of a very tangential thing into that question, but I'll try and answer the first bit. No, I don't think the CFO is required to be an expert on everything. I know a lot of CFOs who who don't necessarily are not necessarily the experts. It's about how you leverage your team, how you can have a team of experts. And as a CFO, your role is really about solving the organizational problems with a great set of data while being compliant with all the statutory regulations. So you will have to leverage a strong team that is more often than not better than you and is an SME at what they do. Today, if I have a transfer pricing person, that person is always going to be better than me. If I have a FP&A person, that person is always going to be better than me. But my role as a CFO is figuring out what the organizational priorities are. How do I use data to be able to help decision making and use my team to ensure that I'm always compliant, and how my organization has to adapt to the changing statutory requirements.
Okay, sir. What we need to do if I'm feeling that I'm not getting growth in my current organization, I'm in a role which I love to do, but the matter is I also want growth.
I think I probably answered that earlier. Change typically happens when there is a push or a pull. So you have to figure that out in terms of what's driving, what's the trigger, and more importantly, in this situation, I would say you should have a conversation with your manager, with your organization on how can they enable growth, how can they support your aspirations, and even if before that, you will need to think through, does your organization and your managers, are they aware of your aspirations? Have you had a career discussion with them in terms of what you want to do? What is the growth? What does it take to growth? Are you ready to, do you have the skill sets to be able to grow? Are there any gaps? Do they expect you to work on anything? So I would point, firstly, encourage you to have that candid conversation and then take any decision after that, depending on the opportunities that are available.
Yes, sir. Shall I move ahead, sir?
Yeah, sure. I know we've crossed our time. I don't know how much more time that we have. Maybe we can take 3 last questions.
Okay. What does DE Shaw look for in a freshly qualified CPA with no work experience?
All right. All our freshers largely come with no experience. So we go through a very structured hiring process for all our fresh talent, which includes at times written tests, which could include case studies, which could include some element of technical questions, or even tests on things like Excel, email writing, aptitude test at some points. So it's a mixture of each skill set has a combination of these structured hiring techniques that we use. So depending on the role, we would come up with a combination of some of these hiring requirements. But more importantly, to while that is the process of hiring, what we look for is two things. Going back to what I spoke at the beginning, how strong is the fundamentals of the person? Does the person understand what they've studied? How much of in depth do they know the subject? And the second one is the aptitude. Is the person open to learning new things? Is the person open to working with others? What is the personality of the individual? Will they be able to collaborate with others and be a team player? Right. So broadly, these are the things that we look for in terms of the personality of an individual.
What are the job opportunities for graduates who are still pursuing a degree like CMA at DE Shaw or any other company?
I'll be honest, I'm not so clued into the opportunities for a CMA. So if, at least from a DE Shaw perspective, all the roles that we have are continuously updated on our career site. So I would encourage you to visit our career site. And if you think that any of the job descriptions there meet your skill set, then I would encourage you to apply for that.
What is the scope of CPA for taxation field at DE Shaw?
So we do, again, I wouldn't limit this to just DE Shaw, but for a lot of large MNCs. Today, it's really a global village in terms of our roles and our jobs. While physically they work from different geographies, the responsibilities are global in nature. So as a CPA, I think there are a lot of opportunities that exist to be participating in global tax teams. And I know of organizations in Hyderabad, including DE Shaw, that actively look for talent in the tax domain, both for tax planning and for tax compliance. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities.
Thank you, sir. So do you want me to go ahead?
All right, we'll take one last question.
Does being on the late side of the age could affect launching or even switching career in any industry or in a corporate space?
Okay, if I understand, if that again relates to age, I would say absolutely no. It does not.
Yes, sir.
It's really your skill set that matters, and nothing else. One thing that's extremely important for me to say here um, is the importance of diversity and inclusion. We as an organization and most of the other organizations really and dearly care about D&I, which is our ability to one, encourage diversity, and number two, not discriminate any individual on any basis. So from that perspective, I would say it's really our skill sets and how we do our job that matters and nothing else.
Thank you, sir. Like, do you want me to go ahead with some more questions? Or, sir?
How many more questions do
Sir,
you have?
we are done with the questions, but like if someone else also has some question, so
Okay, if someone has a question, let's take one last question. It's 5:14, so we'll end after this question.
I think Chaitanya, sir, you had a lot of questions, I guess, today. It's been like
I'm
almost.
happy to take questions. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions.
I guess there are no more questions.
All right, wonderful. So thank you so much, Aishwarya, for moderating, and thank you so much, Shripal, for giving me the opportunity.
I think, Chaitanya, sir, we have one last. What's the
All
best
right.
point to select, like FP&A, controllership, audit, if I want to seek opportunities abroad, which is a
Yeah,
one.
I already answered that question. I'm never going to answer a question on what is good for others in terms of their career.
Okay, perfect. I think they have asked again that. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I think they are asking again because they were expecting some kind of answer for that. I think
No, I'm sorry. That's a answer that you will have to find for yourself.
perfect. I think the questions which have been asked were fantastic, and sir, we had a great time. I mean, it's been like thank you so much for taking out time first of all, and that also on a weekday, which is a working day for you. And on the busy day it's like almost like 3 o'clock 3:15 types, and then you coming and taking up so many questions, giving out a lot of skill sets. I think students will have a good perspective, and at the same time they will also realize that it is not good to kind of do a hopping, change your jobs more and be consistent and upgrade their skills. I think these are very important takeaways, and I hope everyone would have loved this, including me, for sure. And thank you so much, sir. Aishwarya, you would like to add something for sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom, sir, and for giving us time, solving all the questions of all the participants, sir. It means a lot. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. Thank you so much, everyone, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.